Hello, friends. It is so good to see you today. We've got a little bit of sunshine, and it is a perfect day to take a moment for a little lunch and learn. So thank you for joining us. I'm Miranda. Welcome to the Andel Institute. This is our education hub here. And this is one of my favorite places to visit when I come to the Institute because you will not believe it, but there is a whole room of critters back there. There is a team of some of the most creative educators in West Michigan who think way outside the box, and they are busy training our next generation of scientists. They reach about 4,000 students every year, 4,000 teachers every year, and then they have an audience of educators and people interested in education around the globe. So I love the work that's taking place here, and I'm so glad that you've made time to join us today. We have a nice group here in person. We also have a great group joining us virtually. I'll look at you and say hello. I'm Miranda from Wood TV 8 again, and we're glad to have you. As you're listening to the presentation today, if you have some questions, feel free to jot those questions down because we will have a Q&A immediately following the presentation. If you're online, you can, of course, use that chat function, send in your questions, and we'll get to those as well. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Terra Tarango, who has over 20 years of expertise in the education world, really leading the charge here with a brilliant team, but together they are influencing our next generation of scientists. Join me in welcoming Terra.
Thank you, Miranda. Kind as always. And thank you for joining us. I love a blended environment, both in person and online. So welcome to you all. And thank you for spending your lunch hour with us. We really appreciate anyone who is interested in education in general and what we're doing here. We're certainly happy and honored to share a little bit about that with you. So, and I always love being, a lunch and learn rather than me being between you and your lunch. So I feel like that's always a good place to be. So what we'll spend the next, I say maybe 45 minutes to an hour, and those of you who are here in person, we can do a little tour of those critters if you'd like when we're done. And those of you online, you'll just have to come by later and see it for yourself. So over this next 45 minutes to an hour or so, we'll talk a little bit about some of the big shifts that have been happening in education, and namely kind of how we can reimagine classrooms. Here we are all about creating those classrooms where curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking thrive. And we'll show you why that's so important to us as a part of this, this lecture here today. So we'll talk about how we are doing just what Miranda said, preparing the next generation of scientists. So I am Terra Tarango. I'm the director of this institute here. It's a really I'm honored to have this job. It's a delight to come into work every day. The other day I came in and there was a giant thing here that said, "Welcome to the poisonous potluck," which I don't think most people can come in and say that they get to come into that welcome every day. But there was a nice little mock crime scene that our students had to figure out the mystery using some science. So it's a great place to be, but my favorite thing to be is what I call a teacher fairy godmother. So if you think about being an educator, it is a really hard job. And it's an even harder job to do it the way teachers want to do it and the way they imagined doing it when they were going to school to be a teacher. And so it's frankly an impossible job. And so anything that we can do to make their visions of what a classroom should look like be a reality, my whole team is so super dedicated to making that happen. So that's what we're really all about, whether that's through student programs, through teacher programs, or through teacher resources for the classroom. So I think it's a really cool place here because the Van Andel Institute, if you know it, you may know it for its mission on improving health and enhancing lives, looking at that biomedical research. And what's really interesting to me is that from its inception, 20 some odd years ago, Jay and Betty Van Andel founded this institute. Jay had a passion for biomedical research, but Betty Van Andel was a teacher, and she had a passion to making sure that we create the next generation of problem solvers, and that the education side of that is something that they can have a lasting legacy in as well. So this combination of being a place that can take the amazing science that's happening at the research lab and figure out what skills are so important there, and how do we instill those in young people from kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade. So it's really an awesome place to be, to have this synergy between the research lab and the education group is something that's really brought me here and is exciting part of my work here every day. So what we'll talk about, I kind of divide it into two parts. We will talk about some characteristics that are prevalent in science but are scarce in classrooms. And hopefully maybe your own K-12 sort of upbringing this will ring true for you, and kind of, what that looks like in labs. And then we'll talk about a really hot topic these days, how AI is impacting K-12 schools. And if you're not familiar with AI and ChatGPT, you will leave here familiar with it and understanding how to use it yourself, and also how schools might be impacted by it. And along the way, of course, I'll be telling you how we are helping with that, what we are doing about these changes in classrooms. So about half and half, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So thinking about those skills and qualities that are important, whether it's to be a scientist or to be successful in this day and age, I'd like for you to consider these skills that I have here on the screen and just think about how valued are they, these skills or characteristics. How much do you value them? And it probably depends on who you ask. If you ask a scientist, you might get one listing. If you asked somebody else, you might get a different listing. So I'll share with you some of the things that we found. So when we ask scientists how much they value these skills or qualities, here's how it ranks. You can see critical thinking there at the top. Anybody surprised to see high standardized test scores there at the bottom? Okay. But let's think about, so let's really focus in. Here's our top 5. Critical thinking, scientific integrity, perseverance, communication. I couldn't get it to fit there, but that's oral and written, trust me. And curiosity. Look at the bottom 5. Risk-taking. I'm sure they don't want people like breaking beakers in their labs. But also content knowledge. Interesting to see how low that shows up on the list. Good grades, memorization, and high standardized test scores. So what do you think if you asked teachers what schools value most? What would that list look like? Well, I'll show you. Here's what it looks like. And if I take that same color coding over, you'll see it's almost a direct opposite. The very things that scientists find most beneficial tend to fall toward the bottom of the things that the schools are valuing. And conversely, the things that are least valuable to our scientists in the lab are showing up at the very top of the things that schools value most. And this is the key problem that we are here to try to solve. This is why we say we want to infuse curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking in every classroom that we work with. So what we end up with are several things that just feels like a mismatch. So I'm going to share with you in our time here today 6 characteristics particularly that are prevalent. They're so essential in a lab, but really aren't happening in classrooms and what we're doing about it. So we'll start with collaboration. Seems easy enough, but I like to think, quote one of our scientists here, Dr. Pospisil up the hill, and he told me once there will never be another major scientific discovery by one person. And what he means by that is everyone is focusing on such nuanced skills, such a small piece and minute piece of the puzzle, that they rely on their colleagues to look at the other pieces of that and then make sense of that together. And when you think about the classroom, how often do we give our students opportunities to not just, I'll hold the string and you cut it, like cooperate, but actually make meaning together the way our scientists need to do. Also, why else do they collaborate? How else do they collaborate in labs? Obviously, resource sharing. So thinking about, we have here at this institute what we call our cores. So, facilities like our cryo-EM microscope or our biorepository that all the scientists can take advantage of. And how often is a teacher left alone in their classroom to fend everything that they need within those 4 walls, and the person right next door to them might have the same stuff, this idea of cooperating and being able to really collaborate and share resources. Of course, when we collaborate, we can increase our productivity. And we also have a level of quality assurance that is needed in the labs with collaboration. So you have, if you're writing off for grants with NIH, that's a way to give quality assurance. If you're publishing, that peer-reviewed feedback. So that feedback goes into collaboration as well. And again, thinking about how often does that happen in our K-12 classrooms. The second one I will share with you, collaborations first, and then opportunities to fail. How many feel like schools give many opportunities to fail? Not many, right? But I want you to hear in the words of our own Dr. Jones. He is the Chief Scientific Officer, and we asked him, what is the role of failure in being a successful scientist? So I have a 1-minute video here. We'll go ahead and play that, you guys, and we'll hear what he has to say.
I've failed many, many times. But I think it's very important to understand that if you don't fail, then you're not trying hard enough. You're not doing new things if you're just staying in your comfort zone. So learning from failure is really important. And you just simply cannot do great things unless you fail regularly.
I really like showing this to teachers and to students for them to see, a scientist, not just scientist, the Chief Scientific Officer of the Andel Institute, saying how important it is to fail regularly. And so I want to share with you, looking at those first 2, take a step back and look at what VAI is doing about it. So I mentioned earlier we have student programs, we have teacher programs, and we have classroom resources. So I want to kind of show you a little bit of the flavor of what we've done around those 2 skills in particular. within each of those three groups. So student programs, here's an example, and these are all just really relevant. I mean, we could give literally hundreds. As she mentioned, we work with thousands of teachers and students, but I just want to give you a little flavor of some recent things we've done. So we worked with Belmont Elementary, 4th and 5th grade students. There was 80 of these students, and they had to stop an oil pipeline from leaking using everyday materials, and then they had to clean up the oil that had already spilled into that water. So think about the amount of collaboration that is needed for that. They have to work together to figure out how they're going to stop this oil spill. And plenty of opportunities to fail. Our teachers can attest. They fail many times in this process trying to figure out ways for that to happen. So just one small example. Teacher programs. So we recently worked with a school in Hawaii. So Alamanu Middle School, 6th to 8th grade school there, and it was 50 teachers. And I'll share with you one of the things that we do with them in a professional development setting, and it's something we call our SNU protocol. And in this case, these teachers had developed ideas for a project that they were going to do with their students, and we modeled this with the teachers so they can then do it with their students. So we said, get some feedback on your project, when we talked about feedback being an important part of collaboration. And so we give them this model where we say S is for suggest, N is for noticed, E is for enjoy, and W is for wonder. And our little trick on it is you take a sticky and you put the S, the N, or E, or the W on one side, on the non-sticky side, and on the sticky side is where you actually write your feedback. So maybe I have a suggestion, I put an S on there, and on the sticky side I write my suggestion. So I can put it up on the board here. The S is facing out, but nobody sees my suggestion. So if I'm walking around giving people feedback and everyone's doing that, they can see, oh, they have a lot of suggestions. They might need an enjoy here. So they can see a little bit more about what types of feedback they might need, but they don't see your individual comments, so all your dirty laundry isn't aired out there for everybody to see when you're getting feedback. So just a simple strategy that we share with teachers that they can also do with their students to encourage both collaboration and opportunities to fail. It's okay to put something up and to get that feedback and make it better. This is a quote from one of our teachers there. I just think it's fun to use a mahalo because we were in Hawaii, which is really exciting for us. Mahalo for raising our awareness and passion for developing meaningful and quality project-based learning lessons. So it was really great to hear them see that we really helped them do that. And classroom resources, how do we do this? So this is a tool that we created, our team has created here. And as we mentioned, we have 15,000 subscribers to the content. So these folks get this sort of resources on pretty much a weekly, monthly basis, if not more. And this was a particular resource on a way to give teachers the ability to create these diverse groups. Because I don't know if you remember, but when I was in school, you got in the Bluebird group and you stayed in the Bluebird group and you were there forever, right? And you want those kids to experience different groupings. So in this way, the teacher can put in whatever different characteristics they want to focus on. Maybe it's their level of cautiousness, but maybe it's their level of talkativeness. Maybe it's their interest in a particular subject area. But they can put those in there, and this will automatically randomize those groups to make sure each group has a little bit of all the different categories that the teacher was interested in. Simple tool, that's what we're all about, creating really easy to use resources for teachers that can help them do the job, as I mentioned, the way they want to do it. So that's collaboration and opportunities to fail. So going through a few more of those characteristics. Another one I like to point out is the fact that the lab, those scientists are very self-directed, or in our case, we would say that needs to be student-directed. So here's another one of our scientists, Dr. Shi Chen. She isn't given an investigation plan. She isn't even given a question necessarily. She has to come up with the investigation plan to answer the question that she needs to come up to, whether it's to meet her grant or whatever it might be. And there's no defined path from one question to the next. Each investigation leads to another set of questions. And so how many times do we just give our students, here's the investigation plan, go? We need them to develop this skill of being self-directed. Also, this one kind of goes without saying, but hands-on. The lab is innately hands-on. Everything must be tested. Nobody puts a cure out into a drug company because the literature said it worked. You have to go out there and test all of this. And so, again, we have to make this hands-on. So I'll take you through the same three categories and how we are helping students be more student-directed, or helping classrooms be more student-directed and hands-on. So it doesn't get more hands-on than this one. Some of you may be squeamish and not like this one, but that's okay. We like to push the boundaries here and get you out of your comfort zone. But this is a summer camp we did for high school students called Fascinating Physiology. And yes, they are dissecting a cat. So this was very hands-on. They understand the anatomy and the systems of a feline. But the cool thing about this in terms of self-directed, and obviously it's hands-on, but it's very much a self-paced sort of process. So they know what they need to learn about this cat, and then they have a sort of a guided process through that, but it's very much self-directed that they work through that process. In teacher programs, we work with the Michigan Great Lakes Virtual Academy. This was 150 teachers, again, just recently, and they participated in something we call a PBL PAL exercise. So we even get the teachers being hands-on. So something as simple and creative thinking as once they've learned about project-based learning and what that is, and if anybody wants to learn more about that, we have a whole spiel on that we can talk more about, but that's another lecture. Then we have them create a critter with just sort of random classroom materials that represents what PBL means to them. Who is their PBL pal? And they have to explain how does that critter represent PBL. So just really kind of abstract thinking exercise. But these teachers really loved it. So it was something hands-on for them. And then they had to really problem solve and kind of think in a self-directed way about how would I translate something like this in a virtual setting. All these were virtual teachers. So again, practicing what we preach there a little bit. And I'll use another testimonial here that I'm really proud of from Indianapolis Public Schools. So this teacher said, I've been interested in increasing more student-led instruction since I started teaching 11 years ago, but I've never seen effective modeling of it. It was nice to see it well done. So being able to model that and hear a teacher say, okay, I've been wanting to have more student-led, activities in my classroom. Now I can see how to do it. And here is one of our classroom resources. So again, hands-on and self-directed. The students have a challenge. They need to there's been a whole simulated story here where there's been a natural disaster and the power is out, and they just happen to be given some materials that they can make a light bulb so they can see. So that's the scenario, and the lesson plans and supplies are there for the teachers to guide the students, but they're self-directed in figuring out how we're going to create this light bulb to solve the challenge. So again, very hands-on and self-directed classroom resources that we can provide to our students and teachers. All right, the next one is sustained inquiry. So think about how much time do you think the average teacher spends, especially K-5, on science? I'll give you a hint, it's really small. It's about 18 minutes a week. So it's not a lot of time. And you think about what's happening up the hill in those labs. So if we think maybe it's an hour or a day that we get to spend on science at most, let's say in a week, looking up the hill, they spend about a month at a minimum, if not years, or decades even, on one particular question, right? They are working on problems that take a long time to solve. And so what are we doing in classrooms to provide some experience with that level of academic perseverance, that level of sustained inquiry? And lastly, authentic and relevant. So I like to think about our principal investigator here, Dr. Russell Jones. And no one's saying that he's coming in because Dave Van Andel is going to give him a test later. Right? I guarantee you Dave Van Andel is not giving Dr. Jones a test. He's going in there because he actually cares about what science can do to improve nutrition and metabolism and how those things work together and actually get answers that can help help humanity. And so he has a real reason for doing this. And our students want a real reason for doing the work they're doing as well. So I'll share with you a few more examples of that. So this is one we did last spring, I believe it was, with Evergreen Christian here in the Grand Rapids area. That was K through 5, 99 students. I don't know why we couldn't get one more and make it around 100. It was a week-long investigation of watersheds in the area. And so they explored the Grand River watershed, and then they were able to propose solutions for protecting those watersheds. So what you see here is the Grand River is simulated there in the middle, and all the different tributaries that come off of it. Each team had a different watershed that they were able to research and create some proposed solutions around. In teacher programs, we worked with Lamont Christian just a couple weeks ago. We had about 12 teachers come through here for that, and we work with them on a regular basis. So this is an example. Most of the schools that we work with, we do what we call sustained training. We're meeting with multiple times to really make a deep impact in those classrooms. And through multiple workshops, those teachers were able to transform their traditional lesson plans into authentic learning experiences. That's one of our favorite things to do, is take something that you've always traditionally done and say, how can you make a few tweaks to make that more inquiry-based, to make that more hands-on, to make that more student-directed, all those different things we've talked about. So here's one of our participants from that said, I loved your presentation. This wasn't me, by the way, this was my team. And I love using PBL in classes. Hearing you talk in June and now has really driven me to create ideas and really embrace PBL for virtual learners. So I really like to say that because these are things that most teachers hear and they say, yeah, of course I want to do project-based learning. But actually making that a reality in the classroom is really hard. So hearing a teacher say, after meeting with you a couple times, I really think I can do this, that's when That's when we get all the feels. That's what we really want to hear. And then classroom resources. So I mentioned those 15,000 educators subscribing. So we put out timely topics or authentic instruction around events that have recently happened. And we're not afraid of prickly topics. So even just with September 11th, we put out a resource that helps students use critical thinking and communication to understand the historical context of this event. So we take anything, whether it's something as weighty as September 11th or as fun as Halloween. We have spectacular or spooktacular STEAM. So we take whatever's happening that the teachers are already going to be focusing on and try to infuse more critical thinking, more curiosity, more creativity. All right, so that's my little recap. Am I doing all right on time? On Classrooms Reimagined, how we are preparing the next generation of scientists. So we looked at these 6 characteristics: collaboration, opportunities to fail, being more student-directed, being hands-on, having sustained inquiry, and being more authentic and relevant. And I really just skimmed the surface, went really fast over those. Each of those have full day topics and workshops on each of those. But I wanted to give you a sense of just broadly how different what's happening in the classrooms is from what's happening in the labs and how we're really committed to making sure we bridge that gap. But there's also one huge game changer in education, as I mentioned in the beginning, and that's AI. So I thought I'd use the rest of this talk to give you a little introduction to what's happening with artificial intelligence in the way of classrooms. And I know there's plenty of reasons to be fearful and skeptical, whether you're in the camp that feels like robots are about to take over the world, I don't know, maybe, or you're in the camp that feels like we're all just losing our brains because AI is going to do it for us. None of us are going to be able to critically think anymore. I feel like that might already be happening to me. Or whether we're fearful that some human is going to use it for nefarious purposes, to use this tool for not so good. All those are valid concerns, things that need to be looked at, and things that we are looking at with schools and helping them mitigate. But for our time together, it's lunch, it's a nice day. I want us to put on our rose-colored glasses and think about the power, because I think it's just natural to focus in on those things that are fearful, that we can be fearful of. But you may not realize actually the potential that it can provide you, yourselves, and it's also to schools and teachers. So I'll do this by talking a very little bit about what AI is, some tools that are out there that might be beneficial to you and to schools. But I also want to share with you how specifically ChatGPT can help you as just a regular person, and then you can then transfer that to see, okay, how might this need to change, and how might students and teachers be able to use this as well. But I want this time, value your time. I want you to leave here, if you haven't used it, knowing how that works. So I am going to get a sense of that now. I'm curious where you might fall on this scale. Those of you online, I'm going to kind of poll the folks in the room here, so just bear with me. So in this kind of scale, from never heard of it to use it frequently, raise your hand if you've never heard of ChatGPT. Okay, good. Oh, maybe? It's okay. It's opportunities to fail. No. So everyone watched the Republican debate, because that's where it came up. I feel like a lot of people are. How about heard of it but have never used it? All right. How about have dabbled in it a little bit? Okay, looks like most people. Use it periodically? A few. And use it frequently? Okay, a few. All right. If we look at the public in general, as of May 2023, in terms of like the general technology adoption curve, we're still very early on, and that was indicated here. There are a lot of people who still either have never heard of it or have just barely dabbled in it. So, less than 25% are really using it at this point in time. But this curve, we are moving rapidly on this curve, I would say, and people you'll see, once you see it today, I bet you'll be using it after that. So what is it? Generally speaking, Alan Turing, kind of widely known as the father of computer science, came up with a pretty rudimentary test to determine whether something was artificial intelligence. He said, if a computer could generate something, and a human could generate that something, and another human couldn't tell which was generated by the human and which was generated by the computer, that's artificial intelligence. And I would say most people agree that tools like ChatGPT or Google Bard works pretty much exactly the same way, have definitely met that Turing test, and then some. So there's lots of tools out there. I want to introduce you to a few of them, or just at least the types. There is the text generation tools. They mentioned ChatGPT and Google Bard, but there's others that are more specific to different elements of text generation. There's also lots of graphic design. So let's say you've made text and you want it to look like a poster, and you don't have a graphic designer in your pocket or those skills. These tools can do that for you now. They can read your text and figure out how it should be displayed. And then one of my favorites is art creation. So let's say you wanted to create an image of a school principal with a superhero cape in a pop art style. Whatever your imagination might come up with, it can provide it for you. So you can come up with as creative a sample as you want for your next PowerPoint, for your next speech, for whatever it is you might need to do, and it can generate that for you. But for the purposes of our time here, I'm going to focus mostly on those because I think those are the ones that are most beneficial to people right away. And I want to share with you, and I'll actually demonstrate for you how to do this if you're brand new to it. So 3 ways that you can use ChatGPT immediately to save you time and increase your effectiveness. One is with writing, and I'll demonstrate that for you. Another one is collaboration. I'll also do a demo of that. We can kind of create your own demo, you'll see. And then I also want to show you how you can use it for data analysis. And hopefully at least one of those 3 things will match something you do in your personal life or in your career that this can help you with. All right, so we'll start with writing. And I thought for a demonstration, something that a lot of professionals have to do, and maybe you're happy to do it because you want to, give this person a great leg up, but it's also a very time-consuming task, and that is writing a recommendation letter. Something pretty simple. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate for you. So if you'll switch over to my computer, I'm going to sit here and show you how this works. All right, we're right there. So if you just go on to, you just search for ChatGPT, it'll be open.ai.com. And then if you haven't signed up before, it's a typical, you have to sign in, give your email, create a password, but then you're in. So I'm already in here, and it knows me, so that's where I am. So this is what it looks like, ChatGPT. And you'll see down at the very bottom here, it says send a message. And that's when you're going to give it the prompts that you want it to consider to give you the text that you need. So let's say we're going to write a recommendation letter for Miranda, shall we? So I'm going to tell it I need to write a recommendation letter for Miranda. I will say don't put first and last names in here. This is an open source platform, so I wouldn't put students' names. So just be mindful. This is all beta-ish, lots of stuff. You don't know where it's going, but I think we're safe with that. Let's see. Let's write a short. Let's tell it a short recommendation. And so, it's only, I could stop there, and it would make something up. But let's have a little bit of authenticity to this. So let's say what I want to emphasize. So I want to emphasize that she is charming, kind, and charismatic. Anybody disagree? All right, so I'll show you how this works. That's it. I hit return. Bam. I'll just read the first part of this. To whom it may concern, I'm delighted to write this recommendation letter for Miranda, a truly remarkable individual who possesses an exceptional combination of charm, kindness, and charisma. Miranda's charm is simply magnetic. From the moment you meet her, you are immediately drawn to her warm and inviting personality. Her ability to connect with people on a personal level is truly admirable, making her a natural leader in any social or professional setting.
Can I give you some names to send it to?
I mean, like it, is it cheating? I don't know. Okay, we can get into all that, but I mean, if you know her, is that accurate? It's pretty accurate. And how long did that take? And that's just the first paragraph, right? It goes on, obviously. But let's just say that, you know what? I like this. This is why it's called ChatGPT, because it's actually a conversation. This is just the starting point. I say it gives you a really great first draft. And then from there, you can edit it and add in examples, all that stuff. But let's say, I like this, but it's a little long. Oh, I have to, typing in front of everybody is always perilous. Can you reduce it by a third? Bam, we'll just see how it does that. There's a shorter version because you just didn't want to say as many kind things about Miranda. So that's just an example. If you hadn't seen it, I wanted you to see how fast it is, how easy it is, how productive it is in terms of text generation. So if we'll go back to the PowerPoint, I'll show you a few ways that I've used this, and this is more in the education space, but again, wherever you might be, whatever field you're in, maybe these will give you ideas for how you can use this. And I will warn you, this is a very hokey example, so if you are not hokey, maybe look away. But if this is your personality, I gave it this prompt because I love teachers and I want to encourage them. And so I said, and I'm kind of quirky and hokey, so I said, can you write 9 short inspirational messages for teachers? 1 for each month, September to May. Each one should be no more than 100 words, but because teachers don't have time, but should highlight how much I value their hard work and dedication and all that they do for students. They should be creative and innovative and make their teachers smile. Now, if that's not your personality, if you wanted them to be snarky, you could say make it snarky, okay? But this fits me. So 10 seconds later, here's what I get. But is it any good? I'll share with you some of my favorites. October. Like the changing leaves, you transform lives with your passion and care. Your dedication and creativity inspire young hearts to dream big. You are the pumpkin spice that makes our school community warm and welcoming. So if you think it can't be creative, I mean, that's adorable, isn't it? How about March? Just like the spring blooms, you bring fresh ideas and inspiration to our school. Your innovative spirit and boundless creativity make learning a joyous adventure. Thank you for planting seeds of brilliance in our students. Or at the end of the year, as the school year nears its end, we reflect on your remarkable impact. You've been the guiding light for our students, leading them to success. Thank you for making our school a place of growth and joy. You're the true MVP, most valued professor. They're just sort of cute. I mean, I could take these, copy them, put them in the calendar so that each month I remember to send those out. Am I cheating? I don't know, you tell me. But I mean, it matches the sentiment that I feel, and it saved me some time in creating it. So maybe something like that would save you some time as well. So that's writing. The next sort of topic I mentioned that it can help you with is collaboration. So it's not just a text generator, it's like a little colleague on your shoulder anywhere you go or at your fingertips. Here's a few examples of some of the things you can use it to collaborate with. Can you provide me an overview of the latest advancements in whatever industry? Teach me something interesting about a historical event. What are some theme ideas for an upcoming anniversary party? This is my favorite. What recipe can I make featuring chickpeas? I just did that. Or whatever. Help me come up with a catchy subject line for this email. So then you can also, this is kind of a fun one. Let's have a conversation as if you were a historical figure, and then we can have this conversation together. You can also provide it. You kind of saw an example of this. You can provide it text. So you can copy and paste all that in there and say, this letter is too long. Can you reduce it by half? Or expand this idea to create a longer article. Or how can I make this newsletter more interesting? So it can help you with all those things. Would you like to see an example? All right, this is called Choose Your Own Demo. So I'm going to go back here. You can choose one of these, or if you have something else you'd like to ask. Does anybody have one they would like to try? Don't be shy. You can make me call on you. Anybody see one? You want me to just pick one?
Do the chickpeas.
Do the chickpeas. Chickpeas for dinner tonight. Okay, if we'll go back to the computer screen. All right. What can I make for dinner? Is it showing? Yes. Dinner tonight featuring chickpeas. Bam, chickpea curry. There you go. There's the ingredients and there's the instructions. What if I don't like curry? Stop it, ChatGPT. Thanks. I don't know why I treat it like it's a person. Thanks, but I do love curry, but I'm going to pretend like I don't. Curry, can you give me some other ideas? Certainly. If you're not a fan of curry, here are some other dinner ideas featuring chickpeas. There you go. And I'm sure if you picked on that one, you could then get the recipe for that one. So, collaborator, just someone else to think of ideas with, bounce them off. Feel free to customize these ideas to your taste preferences, and you'll have a satisfying chickpea. He's very kind, he or she. All right, we can switch back to the PowerPoint. So like I said, I wanted, especially, it's still so new that so many people haven't been in there at all, so I wanted to just show you how quickly it works, how that happens, and what it can do for you. So that's Choose Your Own Demo. And then lastly, I'll share with you another way that I use it is for data analysis. So again, I'll use a personal example, and hopefully you can translate that to something that works in your world. But this is a true statement, and so I put this into ChatGPT. I said, we just put on a conference for teachers, and the participants completed a survey. So we did. It's called Science on the Grand in the summer. We just did that. I said, can you help me analyze the results? So if you've ever done a survey, exported it to a spreadsheet, you get something that looks like this. And you're just like, I don't want to deal with all that. And so I didn't. I copied all that, pasted it right into ChatGPT, and it gave me this. It said, thank you for providing your survey data. And then it gave me kind of a question-by-question answer. But you can see like number 5 here. What are 2 to 3 big ideas that you're taking away from this conference? And it just said the participants provided a variety of ideas. So it didn't really give me the content. So I thought, okay. So then I said, well, can you write a short 1-paragraph summary of that analysis? Here's what it said. The majority of participants were teachers, 87.9%, with a smaller portion being administrators. The most common grade levels taught were 3-5, followed by 6-8 and K2. Overall, the conference received positive feedback, with 54.5% of participants rating it as excellent and 33% as above average. The key takeaways included the value of creativity, inquiry-based teaching, and collaboration, as well as the importance of incorporating STEM or STEAM perspectives and empowering girls in STEM fields. Participants also enjoyed the keynote speakers, networking opportunities, and hands-on activities. Some suggested improvements included more session choices, better room arrangements, and providing more accessible resources. Despite the minor suggestions for improvement, an overwhelming 97% of participants would recommend this conference to a friend. I don't just say this to show off our conference, but to say, that's, as the kind of leader of this group, that's all I needed to know. It's really tangible ideas for what we can do and improve, but also tell me what they liked about it. I mean, and it took seconds, as you can see. So if you have some data, a survey you need to analyze, if you have some information you need to kind of have the computer do its magic, you can write Excel formulas and all that to do some of these things, but even open text fields, this just takes it and summarizes it for you in a beautiful way. So what are we doing about it? This is a hot, hot topic. I will share with you, we put on in July a teacher webinar, and this was our #1 webinar registrations by far, by 4 times. So that happened in July, and we said, okay, well, let's do it for administrators. So administrators, we did that in August. We had 159 administrators register for that one. It was our #2 of all time. The only one that beat it was how to protect teachers against burnout in the middle of the pandemic. So it had a rival there that is noble. And then this is interesting to note. So we're always learning here, and we're saying usually when we have a webinar that performs really well, we create a resource for teachers to do something with that. And so we created a resource. It has 4 different lessons teaching students about how AI works and how they should use it and how they shouldn't use it, and really introducing them to the topic, I think, in a pretty clever way. Our team did. And it's gotten 2,300 page views, which sounds pretty good, but our average page views are about 10,000. So it's actually not performing as well as most of our timely topics, and what we've learned from this is teachers and administrators are very interested in learning about this for themselves. They're not quite ready to pass it on to their students yet, maybe, which is totally understandable. And what that tells us is we're here when they're ready for us. So we'd rather be ahead of the curve than behind it. So it's performing, people are using it. We're very happy about that, but it's also something we can learn from. It really is just those early adopters right now that are using it. And as more people start using it, they're gonna want to push that in classrooms in smart ways as well. And then coming up in October, we have another event for administrators, something we call Better Together. It's sort of a virtual networking event, and that we have our highest registration ever for that, and they're still coming in. And we're going to create an administrator guide on this topic coming out in October as well, which I would anticipate would perform really, really well. So you can see we're doing a lot to help schools be aware of what this can do for them, but also how they can mitigate the risks associated. I remember I said we're putting on our rose-colored glasses. I'm not talking about a whole lot of those today. But we are partnering, out of doing those webinars, several schools saw that and said, hey, can you help us? We would really love your help with, whether it's kind of consultation or whether it's actually creating resources for your students. But we're helping them to change instruction. I think this can actually be a real game changer in helping us have more curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking in classrooms. Because you can imagine how instruction has to change. No longer can you, as a teacher, say, write me a 5-paragraph essay on, why, on deforestation or something, or why photosynthesis works. Because ChatGPT, you can see, can do that really, really easily. You have to really change the way you ask the questions, make them more critical thinking involved, and make them more personal reflection involved. But also how schools can mitigate the risk while also harnessing the potential of AI. So we're working with a lot of schools to help them do just that. So that's what I have for you. We talked about the ways we're looking at how we can reimagine classrooms, both in creating these characteristics, making them more prevalent in the classrooms that we work with and all across the country, but also in helping schools unlock the potential of artificial intelligence while also mitigating those risks. What's next for us? So I neglected to tell you that over the last, I'd say especially 3 to 4 years, all of the things that we talked about in terms of student programs, teacher programs, and classroom resources have literally skyrocketed. We've more than doubled each of those things in terms of number of students we're working with, number of teachers we're working with. We're growing like crazy, which is really exciting to see that demand happening. And I feel like if I worked anywhere else, they'd be like, great, let's just keep that going. But not Dave Van Andel. He says, well, what if you could shoot for the moon? What if you could really do something amazing with this opportunity? And I really appreciate the challenge to think that way. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we are on a path to go from the 15,000 educators right now to working with 100,000 educators and reaching 2.5 million students. We want to do this in the next 5 years. So that's a small piece of that plan. If you're interested in learning more about that plan, happy to talk to you about it. But I really want to come back to Betty Van Andel, who founded this, and having her legacy be as strong and as vibrant as the research legacy is in this town. So that's a little bit of forward thinking and where we're headed and what we're up to. So I thank you for your attention. If you have questions, I'm more than happy to field those. But if you want to be a part of this and want to help, people always ask, the best thing you could do is don't let us be the best kept secret. If you know a teacher, please let them know that we exist, that we have a lot of these resources. Most of them are free. They can go to www.vai.org and just sign up for Stay in the Know. There's a little section there they can sign up, and they'll get all those resources I just talked about. And if you want to get involved or know anything more, there's my email. Feel free to reach out to me that way. So I think we're ready for Q&A.
Awesome. We can clap. It's fine. It's fine. I have a question. Who's going to make a chickpea dish tonight? Who has any questions? We can accept questions from our group here and from our virtual friends. If anyone has something they'd like to ask, let's jump in. I guess I'd like to start first. You are exploring AI. We all are fascinated by it. What scares you just a tiny bit about this kind of knowledge available to anyone K-12?
I mean, I think what scares me the most is how easy it is to start relying on it. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I did that survey and I just took its word for it, and I was like, well, I should probably go back and check and make sure that's actually what it said. So the stopping the sort of critical thinking aspect, it can help, but how we make sure that we're also not just relying on that alone, but we're using some good critical thinking in that process as well. But I think we can really work on that in the way we change instruction and the way we formulate our questions can help with that. Yeah, that's a good question. Any other thoughts? Yes.
So what's the guardian of the input into AI so that people aren't feeding false information there so that the Civil War started in 1412 when you go out and the students are writing a paper and suddenly, whoa.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I don't know all the ins and outs. I know it's built on what's called sort of predictive text. So the same way that your phone knows when you start to, say, are you hungry, or what do you want for, it knows to say dinner next, right? So it just looks at all the, the accumulation of text out there and says what generally comes next. So I know that basic how it works, but that is certainly something I think that we're going to need legislative work to understand what are those guardrails to make sure what's getting put in there. And then that's not as black and white as we might want to think, right? There's things that some people accept as fact that other people don't accept as fact, and what goes in there as fact. And so there are people, I know we were just talking about, it was at ASCD and ISTE, so a couple of big organizations in education that are trying to curate a ChatGPT specifically for students that kind of filters it for them. So people are working on that, but I think it's way too soon. I don't think that there are any guardrails. And you can put in some kind of wacky stuff and get some wacky stuff back. Now it does know, I've tried some really weird stuff, and some of it will say like, I can't tell you that. I can't, what are the nuclear codes? It won't give you that. I really hope the IT group isn't searching my computer. But that's a really good point. It needs that. There's privacy issues. There's a lot of things in that. Mm-hmm. Yes?
Can you give some insight into the last slide? You said David Van Andel said, reach the moon.
Yeah, so they're really about how can we, as our small corner here in Grand Rapids, have a national impact on education. And I will say that's what brought me here. It was to have a national impact on education, go. There weren't really any guardrails to that, and that's a good sense of not having that. So he's pretty open to how that happens, but really wants to see us have that national impact. And what's really important is that teachers are actually using this stuff. That's something that has been really important to our board and to Dave Van Andel, that how we produce stuff that teachers actually want to use. Because I think there's a lot of experience with solutions that come out, and here's this great new textbook program, and it just sits on the shelf, or these sort of fads. But using things that we know work with our own classrooms, and then being able to transfer those into classrooms across the country, I think is what he's most excited about, seeing that happen on a bigger scale. Any other questions?
If you're using AI in the classroom, then what happens to all this free testing and all that kind of stuff that people right now are getting performance reviews on?
Mm-hmm.
How do you wean people off of that so that you know that you're actually creating a student.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping that this can actually be a catalyst to change some of the emphasis on standardized test scores, because ChatGPT can now pass the bar exam. It can, get a really high score on the SAT. So hopefully the fact that artificial intelligence can do these things will force us to maybe put less emphasis on those standardized tests that just have students do the same things, and more emphasis on those things we call in science performance tasks, where they have to actually create an investigation and then use their results to write a claim evidence reasoning. So I don't mind. I want the students to use technology that can benefit them. So if they've done the experiment and they understand what their evidence is, and then they type it into ChatGPT, can you write me an explanation that includes the evidence I found in my investigation, and I include that investigation? Depending, if you're working on writing skills, maybe not, right? But as a science teacher, I might be okay with that. But I'm making sure that they're actually using their own evidence. So I have to change the way I assess. So you can imagine, that's a big one. The way you assess has to change. But on the flip side, think about a teacher who's grading an essay. You can put the essay in here and say, give me feedback on this student's essay. Help me, here's a rubric for the essay. Can you score it against this rubric and give me some constructive feedback? And bam, it will do it. And so each individual student gets really personalized constructive feedback. So, or write a lesson plan on, whatever topic it might be, and boom, it gives you all that. I'll give you another funny example, because I've mentioned this a few times. I was helping my cousin, who's a teacher, and she's a Texas history teacher in Texas. And I was showing her how this could work, and I said, you can do fun things. Like, you could create a script for a dinner party that includes several famous Texas history characters. And I said, you could include, I think I said Ann Richards and Davy Crockett. And I meant to say Jim Bowie, but I said David Bowie. And so you can imagine the conversation between Ann Richards and David Bowie talking about Izzy Stardust. Anyway, it was hilarious. But so you can have a lot of fun. It can get really creative. But it is a brave new world, for sure.
I want to go to that dinner party.
Wouldn't you? I know.
Yes.
Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't?
Any other thoughts on this? It's such a fascinating topic, so many questions, but I love the Institute and your approach to it. Let's not be afraid of it. It's part of our lives. Let's embrace it and figure out the best way to make it work for our students and for learning. So thank you for thinking like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Anything else? At this time, I would like to give a big round of applause to Terra and her team.
Thank you. My team.
And if you are joining us in person or virtually, always reach out. Be a part of the conversation. VAI.org. Look at all of our upcoming events. We do have one more public lecture series that happens on December 7th. It's taking a peek at the connection between the environment and our health. And I think that's going to be a huge one. So sign up for that, get registered, tell your friends about it. We'd love to have them participate. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the beautiful weather. And I'm going to go meet my new friend, AI. All right.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.